Okay, so welcome to all the listeners for the Branded for His Glory podcast. My name is Justina Ford, and I'm very, very excited to talk with Casandra Austin. She is a former client of mine, but whenever we're doing client work, I don't really get too personal. I don't really go to the places that I may naturally or my curiosity may want to take me. I'm very leading of the Holy Spirit when I do work. We don't need to go places where God hasn't sent us. So on this particular podcast, I may have the freedom to go places, and ask those questions and get to know you on a deeper level. Because when you came to me, I think it was more about, your messaging, your ideal client, your branding, that type of stuff, So I wanted to focus on that. And I just feel like we can now get to know each other more on a friend level, so to speak, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So you are a member of the Multi-Passionate Women of Faith, Soulfully Branded for His Glory. And I love this opportunity for the meet and greets because it allows other people in the Facebook group to get to know you, learn more about your life, how you got started in your business, any struggles or obstacles you might have come up against, And then also, I always love this part about 2 to 3 tips, expert status, stuff to help other people. Because that's very, very important. I want people to walk away from this particular episode and have something that they can take in, their life moving forward. That they can say, "Oh, I learned that from Casandra, and she helped me." Right? So I always like to have that side of things because I learn too. The ladies that come on and they've shared their tips or their tricks. I'm like, what? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it. So we can go. Well, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everyone and let them know. You can go ahead and tell them now where they can find you. I have tagged your Facebook page, but let's do that from the beginning.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Casandra Austin McDonald. I'm a self-identity and purpose strategist with Live Greater Institute, where I help individuals heal, discover who they are and what they were meant to do. I got into the personal development industry actually in my former career. And is there something going on?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying, because we do this live. I'm trying to comment or whatever. And then the darn volume, I'm like, please, can you hear the volume on this side? Is it distracting you? The volume from the call through my phone?
Are you asking me?
Yes, you.
Oh, I didn't know if you were asking anybody on your live. I can hear it, the call.
Okay, I'm so sorry. This is what happens. Okay. So I'm trying to get to a place where I can comment to people, but keep going because you're doing amazing.
No problem. So I got into the personal development industry when I was in my former career working with juvenile delinquents in the criminal justice system. And I was using cognitive-based work. We would do group counseling, evidence-based practices, and it evolved from me helping them to helping myself using the same content and material that I was helping the youth in, and it's kind of snowballed from there. So
yes. Thank you for, giving your brief introduction. And oh, wow. I know the criminal justice is your background. Do you happen to have, what education do you have and if you shared it, I'm so sorry. But education, training, do you feel that you had that led you to that, if you could share that with us?
Sure. I got my bachelor's degree in administration of justice and minored in African American studies. And then I had to go through professional training when I was working with the youth. And then later I worked with adult offenders. So I was trained in motivational interviewing. I was trained in cognitive behavioral group counseling. I was trained in evidence-based practices of how to help individuals make positive changes so they make behavioral changes, ultimately leading to life changes. So lots of professional training. And it's interesting how all of that professional training is now showing up in my life coaching practice.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah.
love. I love to see how people like their training, their expertise, like even just their natural interests, so stuff that they
Hmm.
go and they study, and then how
Hmm.
it then comes back and like shows up in their entrepreneurial career,
Hmm.
right? Um, where do you think that interest for criminal justice and just helping people to transform their lives, be it the youth or adult offenders, where do you think that passion comes from?
I think it came from my own troubled background. I experienced a lot of trauma growing up. By the time I was 9 years old, I had been physically, sexually, and emotionally abused by different family members. So I grew up with these adverse experiences. And then I also was witnessing different things. I witnessed domestic violence in the home, I witnessed alcoholism, I witnessed different extended family members in and out of jail, in and out of the detention center, getting into the street life. So I saw a lot of things growing up. And I think that's when my curiosity was piqued about the why. Like, why do people do what they do? And so, this whole dynamic of me being interested in human behavior, why do we make the choices we make, really was cultivated as a child. I was always asking questions like, why are they doing that? Why do they do that? And I see how that evolved into a career because I saw youth doing things and then adults doing things. And I was just curious, like, why do they do that? Well, then it coupled with my experiences, and I started to relate to the troubled youth because I was one. I used to run away from home a lot as I became a teenager. And by the grace of God, I was able to go on shift and get onto a different path by living with an aunt in high school. But had that shift not occurred, I don't know if I would have been able to go down the path that I was on to getting an education and starting a professional career.
Wow. When you talk about, because I think sometimes we don't pay attention to, like, if we're an adult and we are pursuing, like, our purpose and our call, and we're getting stuck, or we're not sure what direction to go. We don't really
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to like what our youth, what happened in our youth, or like
Mm-hmm.
um just those experiences and how they affect us.
Mm-hmm.
What would what's your take on like having worked with the youth and then kind of seeing how adults have, like, I guess, what materialized for that adult? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what would your take be on that, or your opinion? What's your opinion on something like that with like our childhood, and then we get into our adulthood, and how that kind of like affects each other?
Right. I think that when we're youth, if we don't have that thing that kind of pulls you away from whatever experience you're having, for me, it was track and field and mentors.
Mhm.
It was the thing that kept me focused. It was the thing that, even though I could have went left, I ended up going right. And I
Mhm.
I saw a common theme in the youth I worked with where they typically didn't have that thing, that positive part of their lives to help them to make better choices. And oftentimes they unfortunately became products of their environment because they didn't have that positive example. They didn't have that
Mhm.
positive activity to keep them focused. And what happens is that the older they get and the more ingrained they get into these lifestyles and these behaviors, and they become adults, that's when this whole mindset of it's too late comes in. I'm too old. I've messed up too much. It's too late to make positive life changes. And so you see this mindset start off with being cultivated by their environment and their communities, and then they become adults. And now they feel like, well, I've missed the mark now. I've messed up. It's too late. And I saw a lot of adults that I worked with in the criminal justice system have this mindset where they just felt like they ruined their lives and there was no hope for them. And I think that's when I became even more intrigued in trying to help individuals, um, just planting those seeds, and letting them know it's not too late. You're not too old. You didn't mess up too much. You can find the silver lining if you look for it.
Mm. That silver lining is so important. I know that you talk about a lot about the system, And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anyone to get confused and think that like, oh, she only works with people like in her coaching business now. Like she only works with people that have been in the system, right? Like that's not
No,
it.
I
So
have PhD therapists who are my clients. I have professional women. I have women who have been married and divorced. I've had single moms. I've had women who have never been married, no kids on my clientele. I've had men on my that I've worked with who are professionals. Where I've evolved to now with what I do professionally with my professional development business is I've really started to tune into the professionals and the adults who are wanting to make positive life changes, and they just need some tools and some guidance to help them do that.
yes. So I think that your background with being able to work with those who were so disadvantaged or felt like they, coming from that system and to be able to help them get results, how much more are you capable of helping, someone that's in their professional life? And
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you find, what are some of the differences in maybe mindset or struggles or different things that you find with those that were in the system? You know, past offenders, that type of stuff,
Hmm.
with those that are in the professional world and they still can't like get it together, right? Like what
Yeah.
are some of the differences that you've been able to find?
So, for individuals that I worked with that got caught up in the system, it was really trying to help them see any small win in their life because they felt like they were just a complete failure. They felt, and that's because that's what they were always told, right? They're always told you're a mess up, especially if they got caught up in addiction. They were always hearing these negative messages about themselves. So, trying to help them identify um, one thing that they can connect to, that was a good thing, that was a win, even if it was just a compliment they gave someone, trying to pull out there is good in you, there is something about you that you can connect with to help you get to the other side. That was the most challenging part when working with offenders. Now working with professionals and people who are educated, or even people who just have a trade but they just never got caught into that life. Look at my light going out. I'm like, look at my light going out. We just gonna open
Oh
this blind here.
no.
Oh no,
There we
we're not.
go.
Whatever. We'll keep
It's
going.
all right. Keep
So,
on going.
working with professionals and people who didn't get caught up in that system and may have not even had a traumatic background like I had. I've even noticed that some of them struggle with that. However, it's easier for them to identify their wins, and it's easier for them to identify some areas that, they find good about themselves or their lives because they haven't had this canvas painted about themselves that you're just a menace to society, you're terrible. So that's the big differences I've noticed when working with individuals who are in the system versus individuals who are not.
Yeah. So it seems like they're very similar, like challenges as far as like self-doubts or a lack of confidence or uncertainty about like their next steps and things of that sort. Like there's still the similarity in that sense, but like you said, that the differences, their breakthrough may be quicker, faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I could only imagine that the impact that they may step into is going to be a little bit quicker and faster as well because they're not having to
Right.
come from the ground up, so to
Right.
speak. Yeah.
Right.
I was just curious about that because you have the inside scoop on all of that.
Yeah, and I think when I did work in the criminal justice system with my clients, I think because I could relate to their pain is how I was able to connect with them and help them to find some silver linings. And I think that's kind of what set me apart with some of my colleagues, where they were kind of going by the book per se and just being very robotic in some of their ways, but I could relate to them in a way because I knew that their root was some trauma that they experienced,
Yes.
and that was my root too. And the difference was that I got to the other side and I was on the other side of the desk. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew that if I can identify with their pain and then show them how they can overcome just that area, then that could help me help them achieve a win. So
Okay. Now, when you decided that you wanted to start your own business, the coaching business, because you were
mhm.
already a coach, you're already an
Yeah.
amazing coach. Um, just when I think about the journey that you took, the clients that you had, you know, they're still your clients, right? It's still
Mm-hmm.
your caseload. That's another thing
Right.
too. When you work in that industry, these are still my clients. It's my
Yes.
caseload. I
Mm-hmm.
pour into them just the same way I would with people that are coming through, you know, a different avenue through my business.
Mm-hmm.
So when you decided that you wanted to, well, I guess the first question would be, what made you decide that you wanted to start doing things like over here outside of the way you were doing it with the criminal justice through the system, all
Right.
of that?
I remember I was starting to feel burned out. And I had the highest numbers out of all my colleagues with my caseload. And I was feeling burned out. And I was asking God, why am I here? What is the lesson? Because I had gotten to a point in my own personal development journey where I knew that when something is happening in life, it's there to teach us something, it's there to serve us for a reason. And so I knew I needed to ask, what is the lesson? And God told me, this is your training ground. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because I remember
Wow.
that day I was sitting in my office. I was feeling burned out. I had just got off the phone with my now husband. We were dating at the time, and I was crying to him like, you know, this isn't fair. They're loading all these cases on me. I'm like, I don't feel like I can even serve my clientele properly because they just keep loading it up. I was like, I don't understand why they're doing this. I was just starting to feel really burned out and discouraged. And God spoke to me so crystal clearly. He said, this is your training ground. Soak up all this training you're getting. They're training you professionally. They're training you with experience. This is your training ground. And that's when I knew that I was supposed to be doing what I'm doing now. And so I shifted
Mm-hmm.
my mindset and I started to look at what I was going through as this job is my investor. They're investing into my dream. This job is paying for my training. This job is giving me the experience while I'm getting paid. So it's like a paid internship. I completely shifted the way that I
Yes.
was looking at that experience. And what ended up happening is I became much better at my craft. We used to have to train our sessions occasionally. And then we had a staff who would listen to our recordings. He would critique how we were working with our clients, and that's how we developed our skill. And I had gotten to the point with motivational interviewing where I was being considered an expert. And that's when I knew, okay,
Mm.
this is what's next. So
You go, girl. Miss Expert Motivational Interviewer. I love it.
yeah.
That is so cool. I think, oh, just that mindset shift.
hmm It
I
was a
think
game
if
changer.
Yes, I think if every person that finds themselves, and there's something I love about you too, like you're not that person that says, "Oh, I hated my job or I hated my career and I wanted to branch out." No, your story is different. You loved your job, you loved your
Yeah,
career.
I
You
did.
use that as a platform to
Mhm.
build a business where it operates in a way that you can thrive,
Yes,
right? Because I
yes.
heard you when you said that being able to service the clients, you know, it became that burnout and
hmm
feeling like you're not fully like built up yourself to be able to do it. If you're so burnt out and
hmm
giving so much, you
hmm
can't show up fully for your
Right,
clients. So it's
right.
almost like you're creating a new environment to where you can show up and serve in a way that's conducive for you and the
Yeah,
client, right? It's not
yes,
all about you.
yes.
So that idea of it being a training ground and a paid internship, whew, I think every person,
Glory.
right? Thank you, Jesus, for the paid
Because
internship.
I hear so many people talking about they're going to get these life coaching certifications because they want to be a life coach. And God gifted me with nearly 12 years of professional experience and educational training. And I'm like, you can't you can't buy that online.
Oh,
You cannot
ma'am,
buy that. And I'm just so grateful and
that's
honored
valuable.
that that's the path God took me on. And it shows up in the results my clients get. They're getting breakthroughs. We're getting to the root of some of the reasons why they're not showing up as their best selves. They're getting healing. They're showing up more confident. And I know that is all a result of that background.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, girl, such good stuff. And all the people that are listening, if you're in a career right now, whether you love it or not, know that there's some aspect of the work that you're doing that's going to be able to be that springboard for you. And I'll just give an example.
Mm-hmm.
Life insurance. I used to be a life insurance agent. That was not my passion. Okay. But I am pretty motivated by money. So I was like, I'm going to stick with this career and I'm going to do this for a couple years. Right. And then when I began to shift, and of course, God led me to where I'm at today, but it was like, okay, what aspect of that played a role? What was the purpose? Why did you have me go through that? And it was the sales, being able to ask for the sale, like fighting objections, like that was something I did not have to worry about in my business, right? Like I didn't realize that I was actually good at it until, like, you know, you have your colleagues and people around you and they're like, Tina, you're good at this, like,
Mm-hmm.
help me with this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So anything, if on the job, in the career, even if you see yourself wanting to transition out, pay attention to what can be transferable to where, you know, your passion-based business is, or what the brand is right now, right? So I love that so much. And for you, yours just, I love that it's just like a direct, like you said, it was that training ground that almost every nuance of what you did within your career and your business is definitely going to, within your career, your job is going to be beneficial to all of your clients, right? So I love that so much. Now, were you going to say something?
No, I was thinking about the pivot I made out of that into, so before I got into the position I'm in now, I transitioned from doing that work into becoming an investigator. And I did that for nearly 2 years. And really that honed my interviewing skills and my writing skills. And so I'm connecting, as you're talking, I'm connecting my own dots. Like, you know, it all came and pieced together.
Yes. And my next question was going to be for you. What was it like to transition from, tell us what that transition looked like. Like the transition looks different for everyone when you're going from working at your job to starting your business. Some people do that like while they're working. Some people do a hard stop and start something. Can you tell us what that transition looked like?
I feel like it really started with me publishing my first book, Unclothed Memoir of a Naked Soul. And at that time, I don't think I realized that I was going to want to do what I'm doing now. I think at the time I was saying, I want to publish this book, I want to speak, and I want to write. So I was speaking, I was sharing my story on different platforms, and I was, sharing my book. But as I was working my day job and doing these things, that's when really this whole life coaching bug, strategist bug started to come up in me, because I started to see some correlations between what I was doing at my day job and then what the industry was showing me. And I was looking up to people like Lisa Nichols and saw like, okay, well, she doesn't just have books and speak. She also coaches and trains people. And I was like, I'm doing that right now at my day job. And so I started to draw some connections. So really, this has been a journey. My book came out, it'll be 3 years ago on the 15th, my first book. And so this has just been a short few years where I published my book, started speaking, and then started building my life coaching business. And I was just maximizing my time, waking up early in the mornings before the sun would rise. I was doing stuff on my lunch break, and then I would get off work. I was actually just sharing with someone recently, I can't remember the last time I was on a week vacation, because I was using my vacation time to go to speaking engagements. I was using my vacation time to go to trainings. And so I really was dedicated and focused on building this thing. And that's where all my time, my energy, my money, everything was going into that, because I just felt very convicted that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Wow. If y'all are listening and y'all talk about y'all don't have no time to, you have a business or you're stuck in the 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, and I don't have time to start a business. Casandra just told you how to.
Yeah, I did.
Right?
I really did.
I love it, because you said your vacation time, like, some people may be a little more sacred about their vacation time. That's okay. But when you want to go, when you have another place to get to,
Mm-hmm.
and you have some additional goals, and you have an end in mind, you will use that time to help you get there.
Yeah.
And using it for speaking and training opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool to me. That's
I
so
did. Like,
cool.
I literally, there was one point in my previous career where we had to wear uniforms. And I remember, like, I would have a news interview at like 6:30 in the morning for my book, and I'm hurry up and change your clothes so I can get to work. Or I had a speaking engagement and I'm changing clothes. I felt like Superwoman in the bathroom.
Yes.
Changing my
Ah.
clothes so I can go speak, and then coming back. And I was using up all my personal time, all my vacation time for that. But with that, looking back, I also was having to do lots of self-care because I was still healing myself with some things. And so my sick time went to my self-care, my mental health, my wellness. Because I was doing so much, I was having to make sure self was good. So
Yes, you kept the balance of both because, the world will teach us to grind, 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 but then we don't actually do the self-care side of things. So
mhm.
I'm glad that you spoke to that because that's not what you're advocating. You're not
No, I don't
advocating.
advocate the grind, hustle mentality. No, no, no. And especially
Mm-mm.
as a woman, we were created to be receivers. And I feel like our essence in itself can attract the life we want if we learn how to become the person who would have that life. And I think society teaches it the masculine way, but as women, we have to learn what works best for us. And that grind, hustle mentality really works well for men, but for women, we will experience constant phases of burnout if we don't learn the value in self-care and wellness.
Wow, so what I hear you saying, yes, is that there's a difference between like, and I don't know how you would label it. You have to help me with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between being a go-getter and ambitious
Mm-hmm.
versus doing the hustle grind and
Yes.
yeah, tell us more about that. Like, where do you see that difference?
So the hustle grind mentality, the messaging that I'm perceiving is that you sacrifice sleep, you sacrifice relationships, you sacrifice your health to get the thing. I don't believe in that. I believe
Yeah.
that you have to learn a balance. You have to learn how to be ambitious and driven and go after it with discipline, consistency, and focus. But you also want to learn how to maintain and manage your relationships, your health, and your well being. Because what good is it if you get the thing and then you fall apart and die at the end because you didn't manage anything else? Or you get the thing and you're divorced. You get the thing, you've lost your friendships. And so I think that, and I know people say like, there's no such thing as balance, but I think there's a such thing as managing and maintenance. So
Yes, you gave me goosebumps the whole time. Because I'm sure you help your clients to really begin to navigate that and identify what that looks like for
mm-hmm,
their life, because
mm-hmm,
it's going to look different for each person's experience, their
mm-hmm.
life, what they're wanting to achieve. And I love that you showed that ambition. You showed that you're willing to sacrifice because we have to make the sacrifices,
Yes,
right? Anytime we're
yes,
wanting to step into a business, our purpose, our call, whatever it is, we're going to have to make sacrifices, but where do we draw the line? And I think
exactly.
that's what you've kind of like, when it comes to your relationships and your health and your
Mm-hmm.
well-being, you got to draw the line.
Yes.
So yes, that's
I'm
very,
I'm non-negotiable about that. Like, I have routines in place. Um, I know what I value when it comes to my relationship. So I've had to learn to decipher between, is this the end of a season or are we going through growing pains? And all of that takes time and cultivating. And I think that's where knowing thyself comes in at. And that's something I help with my clients, is discovering who are you really, and who are you isn't your titles and your labels. And I think
mm,
going beneath the surface and discovering that is that deep inner work that I enjoy doing with people. So
wow. Yes, ma'am, because we will, especially I feel like as women, we will go into our labels. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. Look, for
yes.
me, I'm a homeschooling mom and I'm a military veteran spouse, that
Yes.
whole deal. We go into these titles, but then we have to look
Yes.
beyond that. And I feel like that's how women, we begin to lose ourselves when we
Mm-hmm.
wrap our identities in, you know, family, we wrap
Mm-hmm.
it in friendships, we wrap it in our careers, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how do we really peel back those layers to like discover who we are. Like,
Yes.
that's some serious stuff. So I want to take a little break and just thank some of the people that are watching. We've had Miss Takesha McIver with us, Margaret Jefferson Price, and Drina Phillips. Well, we have a man with us, Anthony Roberson, Carolyn Ford, and Margaret says that she likes the idea of discipline, consistency, and focus. Those are actually
Yes.
3 different things. I think in my mind, I would just like lump them all together and be like, discipline, consistency, focus. Well, you just say it rolls off your tongue. But if we really begin to like dig deep on those things, get into the definition of those things, see how they're really showing up in our lives. And are we being, women of our word when we say we're going to be consistent and we're going to take action? I can say you have been a woman of your word. When you're superwoman in the bathroom, switching out those clothes, like you're totally being a woman of your word. Like I'm showing up to the speaking engagement. I'm going to be at work. My client load can depend on me and my private clients can depend on me as well. So that is beautiful. So tell us a little bit more about your book. What inspired you to write a book and what is it about without giving away, because people need to go buy the book. So
yes. So it really started in 10 days from today will be the 10-year anniversary.
Congratulations. 10-year anniversary.
Wait, 10-year anniversary from when I survived a near fatal suicide attempt. 3-year anniversary from when I launched the book.
Wow. So okay. I moved a little bit too quick on that. Sorry about that, but still.
It's okay. That is really what precipitated me wanting to share my story, because the moment I was discharged from the hospital, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to go on this journey. I didn't know what I was committing to. I just knew I was committing to changing my life. And the first thing I did was start writing down the earliest memories that I had, because I started to realize while I was in the hospital that I was there because of all the pain that I had suppressed over the years and never dealt with and healed from. So the very first thing I could think of, because I'm naturally a writer, was write and get it out. And eventually that evolved into a manuscript. And so I started with journaling and trying to just get it out and purge. And it transitioned into me saying, somebody needs to read this, because I was thinking about where was I when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And I needed someone who was where I was and getting to the other side. And I needed to read this story of healing and overcoming. And so really I wrote it for who I used to be.
And that is like the epitome of a brand. And I'll just say that because who you used to be, it's like that shift, that rebrand of becoming someone new, and then being able to stand in that and then help others to kind of like go on that journey with you. Right. So another thing that popped up for me is like, you went from a woman, like you said, 10 years ago with a suicide attempt to a woman now that has her own business, is empowering others, lifting others up. What would you say was like the biggest, and I know this is probably a difficult question because it's so much, right? There's so many different things that pour into us and fuel us and all of that. But what would you say has been like the greatest contribution to you being able to make that shift from within the 10 years, right? If you can look back over it and kind of like start condensing a little bit from being a woman that was so broken, hurt, depressed. I'm adding, maybe putting words in your mouth, but
no, that's very accurate.
Okay, all of that to where you could bring yourself to that suicide attempt, and now you're on fire. Like you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you are pouring into your clients. Like, what has been that biggest shift for you?
The common thread is my faith in God. I can't even remember a time in my life where I wasn't praying. I remember as a little girl, I was praying because of what I was experiencing growing up. And that's the common theme in my story is anytime I'm going through something, I've always relied on my faith. And I think it's by me cultivating my relationship with God and allowing God to reveal to me who I really am, not who I thought I was, and hanging on to that with everything I have. that despite what's happening in my life, despite any setbacks or challenges or obstacles I'm seeing, I know that those are temporary, that there are lessons to be learned, wisdom to be gained. And I've learned that all things really, truly do work together for our good. And that because I'm so convicted by that and I believe that, I think that's what gets me over the humps in life now.
Wow. While you were talking, a song went through my mind, and I don't know who the person is, but I've seen you move. I've seen you move the mountains, and I know that you will do it again. Like I suck with lyrics, but that just came to me. Like, I know you'll do it again. It's just like he will do it again. And every time he's done it for you, it's like that's that little peg that you can say, okay, I know that I know all things will work together because I've seen him do it, and I've seen him do it, and he'll do it again, and he'll do it again. So that song just went through my mind. I didn't think I'd give a few little tunes on the podcast right here. Whoops, my bad. But that song like literally came to me, and it's beautiful. The idea of your faith in God. How would you say that your faith in God intersects with your business? What's your thoughts on that?
I pray about everything. I pray about who I work with. I pray before I work with my clients. I ask for, I always pray and ask God, like, give me the ears to hear what I need to hear. Give me what to say to them. Give me the strategy. Give me the tools. Give me the method. I'm always seeking divine counsel. I don't depend on my own self. Yes, I depend on my professional and educational training and experiences, but I also believe that the people who are experiencing breakthroughs is because I'm combining my faith and my work together for those miracles.
Exactly. And I think this is a really great place to kind of go there, because I know with the podcast being called Branded for His Glory, there are some of us in our business that may wear our faith like literally on our sleeves. Like we wear it on our sleeves. I'm guilty. I wear it on the sleeves. It's like bam in your face.
Yeah.
And then there's some of us where we don't necessarily lead with that. And I remember when I was in my master's program and they asked the question, are you going to be a Christian that happens to be a counselor? Or are you going to be a Christian counselor? And I think those are some of the things that I think as women of faith, we struggle with sometimes, where it's like, I love God. I know that he's a part of my life. I want him to get the glory in every aspect of my life. But when it comes to how we brand ourselves or put ourselves out there in the world of coaching, consulting, practitioner, all of that, how do I brand it? Like, how do I reconcile that? So how have you reconciled for your brand, tell us whether you're putting it, wearing it on your sleeve or it's your personal conviction, like share with us on that.
I don't think I put it on my sleeve. Like people who know me, they know how I am as far as my faith. And I think my clients know that too. Because I don't hide it, but I think that I went down the personal development, professional development route and branding myself that way as a personal development expert, because that was my professional training. And I have that background professionally. And so really, I just saw my business as an extension of what I had already been doing previously, but that now I was just doing it on my own. I had people who were asking me like, why aren't you going in? You should be an evangelist. You should get into ministry. And I said, well, why can't my business be a ministry? Why can't I grow to a certain level of success? And God used me as a Proverbs 31 example of a ministry. And I think really the church has to get out of the mindset that the only form we minister is in a building. I've always had this belief and conviction that my ministry was outside of the walls. I've always felt that. I was like, Christ was in the streets ministering to people. Why can't I be in the streets ministering to people? Maybe my streets is personal development. Maybe my streets is speaking to youth in the schools when I do that, or going to youth organizations like the Urban League and the Boys and Girls Club. I've spoken to all those organizations, speaking and empowering the youth. And so I personally just feel convicted in being out in communities. That's where my heart is being in the communities and reaching people that way. I don't knock people who do ministry work because it's needed, but I feel like where I've been called to is outside of the church walls and in the communities.
Mm-hmm. Girl, you just went there. I was going to ease us into it, but you just went there. You go, girl. I love it so much. I love it. I absolutely agree with you that business can be a form of ministry, right? And that we don't even have to wear it on our sleeve. Like we don't have to talk about, Jesus doesn't have to be at the front of the business every single time for them to actually get Jesus on the back end of it, or to even find out more about it. And then, I don't know, I feel like there is some judgment, with women of faith, Christian women, men, however, that decide to go into business. And if your business even looks or resembles a little bit like you're motivating, encouraging, pouring into the church can handle that, or should the church do that? And I do, maybe that's some of my own stuff, that I'm putting out there, because I don't think every church or minister leader thinks that way, but I do think there's that undertone that you should leave that to the church. They can motivate, or that if we're going to heal, they all they need to do is pray.
Yeah, and
so your work isn't necessary.
I have a whole thing to say about that.
Well, fill us in, girl. Well, before you fill us in, which I'm sure you will not forget, we have a comment from Miss Mary Beth. She says, anything is possible with God, and Casandra is living proof by sharing her God-given talents.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
So I know you have a whole lot to say about that one, and I would love for you to share with our listeners.
Yes. I love the church community because I feel like it helped me get through some tumultuous times when I was in the beginning phases of being a single mom, when my son's father gave me less than 24 hours notice that he was leaving and moving across the country and left me with this baby to raise by myself. And it was the church that I turned to for support at that time. And yes, that helped me. But as I was starting to battle with depressive episodes and anxiety, I was constantly being told to pray about it. Well, I was praying about it and I was not getting any relief. And so when I got into this personal development journey and I started to use the tools that I was using on the youth in my professional career on myself, is when I started to get relief. And I started to realize there are tools and strategies and methods that we could be using to heal ourselves, to give ourselves relief, and to just help us evolve into better beings. And I think that's why God has allowed people like psychologists and practitioners to be here, because there's something for everyone. Why is it okay for somebody to go to the doctor if they are battling with a physical ailment, but there's something wrong with someone going to a therapist or a counselor for mental health issues, or someone going to a life coach to work on their personal development? In my opinion, we need all of them to be full, whole beings. And so that's my little rant.
Yes,
I'm just
girl.
praying about it.
Girl, I do think that that's just a misconception, or that if you start engaging in tools and strategies and methods, that you're leaving Jesus out of it, or that you're saying Jesus isn't enough, right? But sometimes we forget that Jesus uses what he chooses, right? God uses what he chooses. The fact that there's even a tool or a strategy that exists is because of him. Okay. Yes. So we're not separating the two, so
I was just telling a friend this morning, because she was going through something, and I was encouraging her to start studying the leaders in the Bible. I said they all had a tool and the methodology that they used to help them overcome obstacles. And I think people miss that. Like David, he praised and worshiped and used music. Now we have sound baths that are a form of healing. People in the church use praise and worship as a form of emotional release. It's the same freaking thing.
Yeah.
And if you look at all these leaders, they went to wise counsel. Our modern thing of wise counsel could be a therapist. Wise counsel could be a life coach. And so I think people really have to make the transition and the mental shift that we are living in a time where Yes, they're called psychologists or therapists or counselors or life coaches or consultants or whatever, but the title doesn't negate the fact that they're providing something that can help you. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. Yes, you should be wise in who you connect with, because you want to make sure that you're not connecting with someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, or they're not, leading with some level of faith, but don't negate the tool either.
Exactly. Don't get the, because I know the big hiccup is the new age beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
don't get the new age like ideology. Don't let that overshadow the beautiful tool or strategy or method that is out there, because we can strip the tool and method away from the new age world and we give God the glory for that. I give God the glory that EFT exists, the tapping, the
Yeah.
science
Yeah.
behind all of that, and I always make reference to the Splunk Therapy Institute. Like, they are amazing with being able to help you shift and strip out and see that, okay, yes, the belief, I can strip away the belief, but I can still benefit from God's perfect design and the science behind how we can shift our limiting beliefs and how we
Mm-hmm.
can really just step into like our fullness as people and heal,
Yes.
right? There's so many
Yes.
different ways that we can heal. And I love that you provide that for your clients through life coaching, through all the awesome exercises and assignments that you assign
Yes.
them to, because
Yes.
it's beautiful to be able to allow someone else to help you go through the process, right? Because we can't see everything ourselves. We have our
Mm-hmm.
own blind spots. The
Yes.
crazy thing is, my church just did a series on blind spots, right?
Mm.
And they're going through the process trying to help us see those blind spots. So yes, the church does have a role, but what happens when you need to go a little bit deeper? What happens when
Yes.
you need to stay in that one place and they're on to the next sermon, on to the next message? That's when you have to hire someone like Casandra,
Yes.
a life coach, a consultant, a practitioner, someone to come in and help you to really get that healing. And
Yes.
so I love healing work. I'm an inner healing practitioner, so I love it. And a business consultant. I pull those two things together because
Yeah.
it's so, so, so important. And in my brain, one doesn't happen without the other. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And guess what? I will still say, read the Bible, go to church. We're never saying that life coaching practitioners, consultants, whatever, that they're the end all be all, because they're not.
Yeah.
We know
I
that
was giving
Jesus.
someone this example recently where I was trying to explain to them what I do. And I asked them, would you hire a physical trainer and a nutritionist if you were trying to change your physical body? And they said yes. And I said, why would you not hire a life coach or a therapist to change your mindset and to heal and to push past blockages and limiting beliefs that are holding you back from showing up as a version of yourself who you could become? And I use that analogy because oftentimes, again, we're taught in society, we look at things at a very surface level. And so people will, immediately default to hiring a personal trainer or a nutritionist when they want to change their body. But then when there's something going on in their inner world, it's like they get stuck. And it's like, but there's tools out there that can help you move past that.
There
So
are
I'm always trying to,
resources.
yes,
There are
yes,
people that are highly trained, like Miss
yes.
Casandra, that can help you. So yes, so, so, so important to really be able to make that distinguishment between, like, okay, the life coaching world is not trying to be, we're not trying to like play the role of the church, and the church shouldn't try to play the role of the life coach. They each have their place. Sometimes they
Hmm.
overlap, and that's
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
We respect both places. So can you tell us about any upcoming programs, specials? I know you have something that I seen a
Yes.
couple days ago.
For those of you who are saying that you can't find your time, you don't have enough time to do all the things I just shared, where I was starting my brand and my business while I was a full-time employee, while I was a single mom. And what I didn't share is I was also at one point working a part-time job and doing hair on the side so I could provide as a single mom. And I
Oh,
still
wow.
found time to write my book and do all the things that I did. I have a resource called Finding Your Time online course, and it's available on my website, www.cassandraaustin.com /finding your time course. Cassandra spelled with one S. I also have the Grow Through It podcast, and Justina was actually my most recent interview. So you got to go check her out. Yeah, and I have a community on Facebook. It's a free support group, the Transformation Experience, where we do monthly challenges to hold ourselves accountable on our respective personal development journeys. So
yes, I love it. She's Facebook page. I know she's on Instagram, all that good stuff. And what she will do is she will type up a little, snippet for me with all the wonderful links, and I will add it to the podcast notes, the show notes, so that when you listen to the podcast, you can actually get that. I'll also re-edit our Facebook Live stuff that went out, and I'll make sure I put it on there. It'll be in the description of the YouTube video. Awesome stuff, so people can find you.
Yes,
so I am so excited that we did this, spent some time together, dug deeper on your journey, your professional journey, where it intersected with the business. And we can't forget, we've given a lot of tips, okay? You've given a lot of stuff.
Pen and paper.
We probably should have prefaced that at the beginning. Look, go back and listen again with pen and paper. But is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with, the viewers and listeners?
Just don't be afraid to say yes to yourself, and don't be afraid to go after whatever passion you have inside of you. It may not be easy. People may talk about you, but you have to allow yourself to give yourself a try and just go for it and see what you're made of.
So take the risk, go for it. And it's funny, I know we're supposed to be closing, but I remember partly when you were talking, I meant to ask you, was it worth it? Like all of the investments and the, ambition and taking the risk and all that stuff, was it worth it?
Absolutely. I don't believe I would have become the woman I am. What I do isn't just having a business. I mean, it shows up in my marriage. It shows up in my relationships. It shows up in the way I manage my money, the way I take care of myself. So it bleeds into every area of my life. And that's something I try to teach my clients is the core of who you are is going to show up in every area of your life. And so just make the choice to be your best self so you can be your best self in your relationships, in your money, in your health, in your wellness, all those things.
Yes. So I want to share this. When I say branded for his glory, I'm so talking about bigger than just business. And I love what you said about like how we choose to share our story, find that silver lining. We do that in our businesses, like put out this message, for people. Like we totally have to have that same message of finding the silver lining in our relationships, in our marriage, and with our parenting, our children, like so many different areas. So just a preface for those that are listening, Branded for His Glory, the podcast, we are going to be expanding. We will continue to do our business spotlights because I love it, but we will also be expanding into more topics. Me and my husband, we've been planning topics and looking at stuff and seeing where God is trying to take us. So we'll definitely continue our business spotlights because I love them so much. And that's the preface of the whole thing, to show other women of faith that are in business and how they are stepping into business and how they're, intersecting their talents and skills and all of that and still giving glory to God through it all. So I love it so much. Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to hop off. Thank you guys for watching, and let me stop the live stream.